have seen them spend to try to improve their status so everyone will think they're important, and you've seen them just waste money because they have a lot of it. And you have seen the opposite. In fact, when the recession was at its worst in Canada, they ran a survey of Canadian business owners in 2010, and the business owners said the recession had forced them to be better business people because they didn't have the resources to throw money at problems. So one example of this, I always pick on my poor mother who bought my liquor store, this liquor store that I own now. My mother bought it in 1992, and the guy before her had just not carried much wine. In fact, I think he had every wine that Gallo made with a screw top, but I don't think he had very many wines like with a cork. And in the back room, and that was in 92, and any good wine came with a cork at that time. And so there was no place to store all those wines that Mom was starting to carry in the back room on their side so they would stay in good shape. So she had to figure out either spend money on custom wine racking, which they make, you know, this works perfectly for wine bottles, or commercial shelving that she could use, or she went out to her storage building and found the bookshelves she had been holding on for 3 moves and brought them to the liquor store and took the cardboard boxes that wine comes in and puts them on their side. And that is what we are using 20 years later. You are the first crowd to applaud my mother's frugality. I will tell her, I will pass on your good wishes to my mother. She tells the story, actually she traded for those bookshelves a long time ago, so she didn't even pay money for them, and she couldn't throw them away because you might need that, right? You might need it. So that's frugality on a small scale. A larger company that put their creative brain power to use and benefited from it is REI, Recreational Equipment Incorporated. Anybody got an REI jacket or a tent or something? Yeah, a couple of people. REI is a cooperative. They are a cooperative. It's a membership thing where what it started as, it's 1938. 1938, a group of 23 men who were mountain climbing buddies wanted to buy climbing gear, you know, beaners and ropes and stuff, and they wanted to buy in bulk and share the cost savings. Well, it was 1938. There's not a bank in the world that was going to loan them money. So what they did is they formed this cooperative and used that as their financing. That's how they got off the ground, and it's working for them to this very day. They are the largest consumer cooperative in the United States, 4 million active members, and it's still only $20 to be a member. And so that's some creative financing. Cooperatives, you can in fact also be employee owned, and you also see cooperatives that are done for buying power of merchants. So like Napa Auto Parts is also a cooperative. That's where merchants have gotten together and they're pooling their buying resources. So the third rule is multiply your lines of income. This is how you end up owning a liquor store and a cattle ranch. And speaking to people about small business is because I know that, say, if it's a bad year in the cattle market, then you hope that it's a good year in the liquor market because all the cattlemen need to go get a drink because they feel bad. So everything evens out. It works. It works. So multiply your lines of income. You can do this in your own business, no matter what kind of business you have. You can have more than one line of income within a business. If you have ever been involved in a business where there was one big client who was the only big client, you know what a risky feeling that is. So you want to multiply your lines of income so you're not completely beholden to any one person. So a couple of examples of that. Of course, we'll do a farming example because we can. So farming, multiple crops. How many farmers do you know that have more than one crop? You know, I talked about the Percivals dealing with that wheat market that goes up and down and maybe zero. They also do cattle because that helps to even out those years. They're able to, and in fact, they can run the cattle on the wheat out in western Oklahoma. We do wheat pasture, and they're able to do that on the same ground. So besides farming, then you can also do this with a big company. So no less than Sir Richard Branson, who decided he needed a record store. And then he decided, well, you know, I also need a recording studio. And then he decided he needed 200 different brands. But he didn't try to start them all at once. He did like a farmer, and he started them one at a time. You establish one crop and let it get established, and then you plant your next crop and get it established. And he has now 200 different brands. He was interviewed in 2010 about how the portfolio of Virgin brands had survived so well in a tough economy, and he credited their diversification and their long-term outlook and their dedication to staying small. That's 3 small-town rules in one interview from one knighted business entrepreneur. So realistically, that kind of diversification can really help even if you are a large business. So that brings us through the first 3 of the rules, and I'm going to give you 2 minutes at your tables. 2 minutes to an actual business that you have seen in the field. I have actually seen somebody do this, so I hope you are making a couple of notes of businesses you have seen. You've got 2 minutes. On your mark, get set, go. Yeah, I need somebody to do the buzzer for me. All right. We're going to go on to how technology has changed, because we know technology has changed pretty significantly. We're standing at Social Media Tulsa Conference. I don't have to lecture you too extensively to say, yes?
I just have a question. When you were talking about multiple lines of income,
yes.
How do you balance that with trying to find a niche? You know, like sometimes you hear like to go to kind of barrel into just one.
Okay, so this is a great question, and I'll answer it really quickly right here. And that is, how do you balance finding a good, tight, narrow niche with having more than one line of income? Are you spreading out? You can go into one niche and offer those same customers more than one product or more than one service or more than one thing to satisfy them. So within, say, the travel and tourism industry, if you're serving tourism professionals, you might offer them online training courses, you might offer webinars, you might offer printed books, you might offer direct services and consulting, you might come in and do training, you might do individual coaching and mentoring, you might do group services for that same group of clients, that same tight niche. But you never want to come to the point that you have one tiny, narrow market and you offer them one thing and you have only one client. So this is called the perfect storm. And then the end of that is that you're out of business. So stay within your narrow niche, but broaden out what you offer to them. Okay, so technology. Technology has changed everything. Do you guys just want to agree to that and we'll move on? Okay. Rule 4 is to work anywhere, anywhen. How many of you snuck in a little email work already this morning while I was talking? Not while I was talking. Okay, okay. But, you know, I understand. I understand. And what'd you say, working in the bathroom? Is that what you said? Oh, that's bad multitasking right there. So you do want to work anywhere and anywhen within reason. But here's a couple of examples of companies that have rethought our concepts of location and time. Hop Union, how many of you know what hops are used for? Beer. Okay, hops are used to brew beer and to give it that good bitter flavor. That's what the hops are for. They are grown in a very limited latitude band, and so Washington State happens to be one of the few places that they grow a lot of hops. And in Washington State is this little company called Hop Union. They focus on the small individual growers. They buy their crops, and they connect to the multitude of small individual brewers. So while each brewery would have a hard time connecting with each hop grower, they act as the middle point and connect all of those. Now, they didn't build their own distribution system. They used the existing distribution system of FedEx. And so that saved them an enormous wad of building a whole nother company just to run trucks. So they're using the FedEx distribution system, and they ship hops within 48 hours to do fresh hops, and then they ship dried hops all year long. And then the second trend I want to talk about right quick is rural sourcing. This is a Globalization Today magazine, which is an outsourcing magazine, put up the headline said, "Is this your next IT hub?" And they show this big empty field. So rural sourcing is taking a contract that might have gone to a big city company and that then maybe have been outsourced overseas. What if we took the same contract and put it into a small town where the cost of doing business is less? If we went to Perry, Oklahoma, and found technology-savvy individuals there, the cost of doing business is so much less than, say, downtown Chicago. How much money could be saved for the company, but keeping the contract within our country? And there's additional benefits of whether you feel like shopping local or not. It does have, you're going to have reduced costs, you're going to have the same culture and language, you're going to have the same time zone, and U.S. governing law, which is a big deal, especially if you're dealing with healthcare information and you don't want that information leaving U.S. shores. So rural sourcing, there's actually dozens of companies that do this now, and Gartner Outsourcing has an annual conference. They actually had an entire pavilion. You know, they have a pavilion dedicated to India and a pavilion dedicated to Pakistan, and then they have a pavilion dedicated just to rural sourcing this past year. So that's a big step forward for rural sourcing. The rule number 5 is to learn customer-driven communication. This is the social media rule for those of you that were waiting for one. This is where we know that our customers drive communication at us using a broad variety of tools now. It's not just that you have to only answer the phone. It's that your customers are communicating with you all the time using every tool they can get their hands on. And a company that has done a great job with that out of a small town, I want you guys to all, if you know Scott Townsend, please tweet to him that we're giving him a hard time while he's not here. So Scott Townsend, works for United Linen. United Linen, do you know what United Linen is? It's a laundry. They do napkins and tablecloths. It's really a big glorified laundry with trucks that deliver. That's the essence of their service. And yet they are one of the most high-tech, best communicating companies out there. They used to, when the delivery schedule changes for a holiday, they would like print it on the back of the invoice. And now, I don't know if you've ever worked in a small restaurant, but do you know where the invoices go? They go to the owner's desk in the back room and in the pile of invoices. And then somebody turns and says, oh my God, we're almost out of napkins. When are they bringing more? And they don't know where to find the schedule. So what Scott does now is record a video every single time. And he puts it up on a YouTube account, and it says, if your delivery was Thursday, now it's going to be Wednesday. If your delivery was Wednesday, you're going to be on Tuesday. And he explains the entire schedule change, posts it on YouTube, puts it on the company website, shares it on Twitter, shares it on Facebook, so that nobody is left wondering, hey, when do we get more napkins and tablecloths? That way they can all find out. They do useful videos, too. I mean, Scott does a great job of reaching out in multiple ways, because he understands that's how his customers live and work now. So that's one United. The other United that we're going to talk about is United Airlines. And you know the story of United breaks guitars. United baggage handler tosses a guitar. The guy actually saw him do it. What really happened is not just so much that they broke his guitar, but that their customer service failed to make him happy in any way, even a little bit. And because of that, he took his frustrations and drove his communication to YouTube. Now, the fun thing to me is that years later, United Airlines uses that video in their customer service training. That's a customer driving communication right into the heart of a company. Now, even more fun to me is that the competitor airlines do the same thing. They train with it too. Okay, so those are the two of the technology rules. So that's a short section. You've got 2 minutes. Ready? Go. Society has changed. Okay, so we know that there is an entire local movement sweeping through society. It is affecting, there's shop local and local foods. Local travel is very big. There's a lot of local heritage stuff going on all in one big movement. And about rule number 6, which is to be proud of being small, because right now U.S. consumers are very interested in small businesses. It took just one too many, too big to fail before we stopped caring about the big businesses anymore. So now we're putting all of our emphasis on our small businesses. And in fact, American Express's survey in 2011 showed that 3/4 of U.S. consumers would prefer to buy from a small business because they felt like they would get better service. And I will point out that is a complete reversal from how we were, say, a decade before that, when we all preferred to buy from a big business because we felt the standards of quality would be better. So it is a complete reversal in your customers' thinking. Now is the perfect time to be proud of being small. So don't try to pretend you're any bigger than you really are. And I will add, it is completely possible to build something very big even while staying small. W.L. Gore and Associates is a company that everybody probably owns at least one piece of Gore-Tex fabric. I mean, you probably have a pair of Gore-Tex boots or a coat or a raincoat or something. That Gore-Tex fabric is made by W.L. Gore & Associates. They also do a lot more with chemical and engineering. And that company has 8,000 associates worldwide. But do you know how large their largest work group is? 150 people. That's it. That's the largest work group that they allow to exist. Now, the last rule is to be local. Be local. We've talked a lot about local, and I know that local is very much on everyone's minds. So let's talk about a few examples of companies that really get being local. And the first one we're going to do is Shiner Beer. And you know where they're from? Shiner, Texas. She even said it with her accent. I love it. Shiner, Texas. And their boxes, in fact, say, brewed and bottled with care in the small town of Shiner, Texas. So you remember we talked about Rolling Rock, talked about being born in a small town. Shiner lives in a small town to this very day. And they're showing off their local favorite. The ones that their customers in Shiner love the most is the Shiner Blonde, because it gets really hot in Shiner, and so they like a nice light beer to go with. But see, they know that you will be influenced by knowing what is the most favorite beer in their location, even though you're not from Shiner. They're tying into their local favorite. If you've been through Atlanta's airport lately, you've probably seen the Delta ground operations crews are all sporting signs that say things like Delta's hometown airline for the last 70 years. That's trying to show their connections and their roots down deep into Atlanta. And it helps give you a better impression of them to know that they have that kind of a deep connection. So we're seeing all sorts of companies explore their connections. Another one is Domino's Pizza. Domino's did a really great commercial showing off one of their local franchisees. They introduced Parmesan bites. Has anyone tried the Parmesan bread bites? I guess they're really good. There's no Domino's in Alva, so I can't tell you these things. But they're showing off Findlay, Ohio, because that's the location where the franchisee is who created the bread bites. And so they have made an entire commercial showing off the fact that he's on Main Street in downtown Findlay, and they show off the town and the water tower and his best friend, the car dealer, and they show this connection to a place. And I can tell you that the people from Findlay were really excited about this, because I ran a few searches looking for the images for this, and I can tell you they talked about it a lot. But I also saw comments from other people, not from there, just excited to see a national brand feature a small town. So that kind of connection works very well even for national brands. And that's the last two of the rules. I'm going to give you 2 more minutes to do these, but you have to promise this time when you come back that you'll wrap up in 2 minutes, okay? You got to do it. All right, so you've got 2 minutes. Go. Question and answer. Means you me. All right, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, before you get to do question and answer, I want to talk about that these are timeless business principles. These still matter whether you believe in them or not, whether they are currently in fashion or out of fashion. It's something that continues to exist like a law of physics. They're continuing to operate. Let's talk about one company that gave up their small town rules. We're going to talk about Community Bank and Trust in Cornelia, Georgia, home of the Big Red Apple. It was a small town bank, and so they had pretty high requirements for a down payment and for income before you could get a loan for real estate. They would send a loan officer out to inspect each piece of property used as collateral, and they had relied for years on their knowledge of an individual person, and they would consider not just the paper that you brought in, but they would consider the kind of person you were and your character. So that kind of small town banking had kept them alive for 100 years or more. Now what happened was in about 2006, a real estate boom started, and people from the Atlanta metropolitan area started coming to Cornelia to buy second homes because they had the additional money from the housing boom going on in Atlanta. So they were investing it in second homes outside the area. So prices started going up, and soon they had a real estate boom in their hands. And what they finally realized at the bank was anybody can make money in a boom, right? That works as long as it works. So the boom continues. They realize that so many people are making good money in real estate, they should loosen up their lending standards. And so they start approving more and more loans. They approve loans to people that are not from the area, and they stretch out that connection between the community and the banking institution and the borrowers and the buyers. And so what happened in 2010 was the prices started to slide. They lasted a lot longer than most areas. The prices slid, everything went to pieces, and the FDIC closed the bank in 2010. The bank let go of rule number 1, plan for zero. They forgot their long-term outlook, didn't they? They also really lost their connection to the local in a big, big way. They forgot about it. And it cost that town a key business that was a pillar of the community. I mean, it was called Community Bank and Trust for a reason. And that is what letting go of these principles can do. Whether they're in fashion or out of fashion, they continue as solid, bedrock, timeless principles. So now we are going to do question and answer. I have time for like just a couple of questions because I've saved a little wrap up. We're going to talk about the future of our cities and towns, what that's going to look like. So just a couple of quick questions. Who's got a first question for us? Who's dying to ask a question? Hop right up. Nobody wants to ask me any questions. Well, hop.
Yes. Okay, so you're talking about diversification, and my thought on that is what my company is good at is we're really good at one thing, but we are diversified, have another thing, but we recognize that we're probably not the best at that. And so the risk on that is how do you make sure that when you diversify, you go to something that you're excellent at?
Okay, so the question that you asked is, when you diversify, your company has 2 main products or services that you offer, one that you're really great at, but the second one you just don't feel like maybe you're the best in the world at. And so you're worried about, when you diversify, how do you make sure you're not diluting what you do and getting into something you're not the best at? So there's a couple of things that you can do. One is to look for something that's closely related, and you look at your relatable skills. I gave an example earlier about working with the tourism market, that you could offer online training, you could offer printed materials, you could offer in-person training. The same core educational skills underlie all of those. And so look for the ways that you can take your existing skills and apply them in new settings that are going to bring you continued success and that really build on the things that you do the best. The other thing that you can do with that is you can look at what is a really closely related market that also needs what we're doing. Because one thing is to take your skills and go to another place, and the other thing is to take the entire set of products and services and turn to a new market all as one big unit. Although building a new market is a big undertaking, so make sure your first thing is very well established before you do. So that's first. Make sure you're well established, and then transfer either skills or into a new market. Who else has a question right quick? No more questions, really? I'll answer one more. I'll also be around all day today, so if you have more questions, you can come up and ask me. And I do reward people that come up and ask me questions today because I was able to drive over here, driving distance for the win. I actually brought my liquid business cards from the liquor store, so there's only a few. So the first few people to come up to me and go, oh, well, I have a question or a comment, then you can take one of my liquid business cards. Yeah. Let's have it. You're in charge of business cards. Get out a business card for her. Let's have the question.
Right. Well, it's actually a comment. This whole thing has been. I apologize. But hold on, I need this. This whole thing is brilliant.
Oh, you like it? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was terrified she was going to tell me this whole thing was awful.
Seriously, it came at a perfect time for the company I work for. Like, I cannot wait to go back and share this. It's the whole thing is just, it's perfect. So thank you.
Good. Give this woman some liquor. Okay. I want to pass on what John was saying, which was he was going down this list of 7 rules. He's going, we do all of this. We do it all. This is exactly how we run our company. I said, where'd you grow up? He said, Richmond, Virginia, 4 million people. I said, that's not a small town. Where are your parents from? Town of 10 people. That's where it came from right there. I understand. So you come by it honestly. So I do want to give you a little peek at what is going on with the future of our cities and towns. The future of our cities and towns, in a large degree, is being rewritten even as we speak. So we've all heard the stories of small towns are disappearing and drying up, and that the centers of our cities are in trouble, and that standard pattern, that story that gets told over and over, has changed, and not everybody has caught on yet. But what we're seeing is we're seeing this shift to local. We're seeing all those trends that are strangling the big boxes. All of that is putting the emphasis much more on individual commercial districts, so those walkable downtown-like areas. So it's not just greater metropolitan downtown, it's those individual districts and those individual areas that are dense and compact. That is where a lot of the magic will be happening in the coming years. And it's not just about what's in metropolitan Tulsa, but it's also about the small towns that are around, because each of them have dense, compact urban areas and dense, compact downtowns that have a walkability and a quality of life that's very good. So we're seeing a big shift. No less than the New York Times has recognized this shift and realizes that people are moving out into the smaller towns around because they can get the quality of life, the dense and walkable lifestyle that they want, but they don't have to be located in the really high-cost area of New York. So this is happening countrywide, and we're seeing it in very small towns as well, even towns that are relatively rural and remote, like Alva, Oklahoma. We see that we have a nice, dense, comfortable, walkable downtown with a grocery store nearby and housing that's in walking distance. And so we're seeing a resurgence of interest in our downtown. I think that's a very encouraging trend. The key to this is that metropolitan quality in a micro size. And so I'm going to borrow a word from Katie McCaskey, which is micropolitans. Micropolitans. If you'll search the Micropolitan Manifesto, you'll find that Katie McCaskey did a great job explaining how all of this works. But the key is that local living economy, and that is based on our own locally owned businesses. Those are the key. They have to be locally owned businesses, because those are the ones that return twice as much of every dollar of revenue into the community. So the locally owned businesses are the ones where you have business owners who are invested in your community, people that are embedded in the very fabric of everything that goes on, the people who donate, the people who give of their time and effort, the people who join boards, the people who create jobs, the people who are investing in your community are your local business owners. So those are the key to our future. And in fact, Charles Tolbert at Baylor University in Waco did the research on this and found that locally owned small businesses are associated with higher average income levels, lower poverty levels, lower crime rates, lower juvenile delinquency, better health indicators such as lower rates of diabetes. All of this is highly associated with small businesses, but not associated with larger businesses. Because once again, who are the people that invest in your community, who invest in the health of your community, who invest in the liveliness of your community? Those are your business owners. So the best thing you can do for your community is to start your own successful small business. So I challenge all of you to think very seriously about starting your own businesses, at least on the side, because it makes a huge difference. Now, for those of you who swallowed your gum when I suggested that, I will say you have 2 important roles to play. Every one of us, even those that have businesses, it's important that we do 2 more things for our communities. And one of those is to tell business owners that they matter. Walk right up and open your mouth and tell people that you appreciate their business or that you're interested in their business. Viking Ranges, this huge global brand, Viking Ranges, based in tiny Greenwood, Mississippi, is still there because the founder, Fred Carl Jr., when he spent years toiling as a builder and working on the stove project on the side, people would walk up to him on the street and say, "Hey, how's the stove project going?" People cared that it was going somewhere. And he said out loud and in print that that's the reason he stayed in Greenwood instead of moving into Jackson or into Dallas-Fort Worth, where they wanted to move his manufacturing. So open your mouth and tell the businesses that they matter. The second thing is to open your wallet and show your businesses that they matter. You need to shift your shopping more to locally owned small businesses in your area. It matters a lot. And I know that it's fun to go to the big town and do a day of shopping. I get that. And I know that you can save a little bit of money if you buy it online. I get that too. But if you'll shift your shopping just a little bit at a time, you are investing that difference in your community. You are investing that in the future of your town, in those higher average income levels, in those better health rates, in the lower crime rate. That's what you're investing in when you spend your money with those locally owned businesses. So it matters what you do. It matters that you take the brave leap and jump into your own business. It matters that you walk up to a business owner and say, "I'm really glad for what you do for our community." And it matters that you take your money and make your purchases happen at locally owned businesses, because that's the future of our cities and towns.